He saw her. You waited, Lord. You waited, Lord, for me to hear your word. Now I will search no more. I saw you in the poor, in everyone that you know, in everyone that you meet, in the rich man in his palace, in the poor man on the street. See Jesus, see Jesus, see Jesus, see Jesus.
The words that she said to Marlene, and the words I would just continue to say, beautiful presentation this morning, and Linda has one prepared for us about this magnificent woman, is, she said, the glory isn't to me, the glory is to God. I thank God that this magnificent and beautiful person, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, lived her life and said yes to God. And what I was praying and marveling at is that you, each one here, is as beautiful a creation as she. You are, each one. And I think Marlene's message is that the glory and the honor is always to be given to God. And that example she used about the pencil can do nothing. And she knew that. She really knew that. And what God did with her, I can always remember her saying to me as she pounded her little chest, look what God is doing with nothing. See what God is doing with nothing. And she was aware that. A woman by the name of Mary, our mother, knew that. And Teresa reflected that same gift of Mary. Look what God can do with nothing. And as you continue with the day, I'm going to have a little break here now, and then we're going to have Linda's presentation on her reflections and life and beautiful unfolding of Mother Teresa. We'll be back here and so to hear her presentation in 15 minutes. We'll take a break.
I wanted to start today with a little story of how it all began in 1995 on that plane ride to India. I was a nervous wreck, honestly. I'd gone through what Monsignor described as deep desolation. One of the first pieces of advice that Monsignor gave me when I met him for the first time in 2003 was this: remember, Linda, for every desolation that you experience, you will also experience equal consolation. And he said, now it's time for some consolation in your life. And I've always remembered that when I'm in my desolation, that it's temporary. And he said the saints, the secret of the saints is that they stay somewhere in the middle. Not too high, and not too low. So they are so able to see that what they are experiencing at the moment is temporal. It's temporary. It's just part of this earthly life that we must experience, including the suffering and the desolation, because that is where we also learn our most profound levels of compassion. You cannot experience compassion unless you experience the same level of suffering. And so when I met my husband, Ron, in 1988, right after the presidential elections, when Bush was elected, I had been on the campaign trail for about 2 years. I was really tired, so this year it's pretty interesting, giving my students the opportunity to experience these elections and drawing from my own experience. And so I went to this little Jamaican restaurant in Atlanta, and that's where I met my husband, Ron. He wasn't my type, you know? I usually went for the taller, kind of gray hair, or partly gray, slender. Ron was small, and he had a beard. But we couldn't take our eyes off each other. He had this glint in his eye. You know what that glint is? It's the glint of compassion and love. And I saw that in his eyes. It's very clear when you experience that in a human being. And I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? This journey, it's about opening our hearts. That's the journey here. It's like, how far can we go to open our hearts without lifting those barricades every time we experience someone's and we want to run away because of our fear, the fear of cancer, the fear of loneliness, the fear of abandonment by families. Instead of being there to help them, so often we want to run away. And so I have never done this before, I promise you. On the way out of the restaurant, I dropped my business card next to Ron. And he called me 3 days later, because, you know, men aren't supposed to call for 3 days. And he invited me out 2 Saturdays in a row. I really like men who can make those kind of commitments. Because he knew he wanted me. And we were together like glue. Although I kept running away from him because I was really afraid of commitment. It had been really easy for me to get on planes and go and photograph world crises and politicians because I always had the back door that I could go through to go home. Well, with Ron, I kept finding those back doors. Well, this isn't going to work. But he kept running after me. So eventually, I settled down, and I said, okay, we're going to get married. 3 weeks before we were going to get married, he came back home with this enormous headache, and we found this huge mass on his neck that just happened to come out from behind the carotid artery. A few days later, he was in surgery. And this is when I had one of those moments that I can only describe perhaps as God walking beside me in that hallway at Emory University Hospital. Because as I was pacing the hallway, up to that moment, I was still, in some level, without that commitment. I was kind of with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And suddenly I heard this glass cracking around me. And it was like this door shattering. And I was wondering, did somebody walk through a glass door? And suddenly I realized that it was the wall around my own heart that was shattering. And that I felt for the very first time, this profound love for Ron, but just love. This profound sense of love that I had never quite felt before for anybody. And I felt like God had just kind of punched this hole through my wall. And I also was given the sense that Ron was going to be very sick and that he would die. And so we went on this journey of love together for the next 18 months. And we did go ahead and get married. My sister, the attorney, kept calling to make sure that I was all protected and that I wasn't going to be responsible for all his debt and bills. But under Georgia law, a widow is not responsible for her husband's debts. So then she was okay with me getting married. She's a character. So this was the beginning of my journey. And it was through, we actually went to India together when the doctors said there was nothing else they could do for him. And it was there that I had my first sense of Mother Teresa, and I had a dream that eventually I would see her. And it would be 3 years later that she arrived in Atlanta, and when I had that first encounter with her at the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. Let me tell you another quick story, and because like Marlene, I tend to talk a lot because there's a lot to say. Because I was not raised in a family of prayer, God has to show up for me in really magnified ways. People say, well, gosh, I wish he'd show up in my bedroom, you know, and talk to me. Why doesn't he show up for me? Well, maybe you don't need it because you already have a deep prayer life. Maybe because you've already have this deep connection through your weekly and daily prayer life. Maybe I need God to sit next to me on an airplane, as he somehow managed to show up on that plane ride to India in 1995. I was sitting on the plane and I nearly didn't go to India because my father, who had suffered from congestive heart failure for many years, nearly died, and I nearly stayed behind. And I was feeling in this period of desolation, the loss of my husband. I had met this other man, but it was a very difficult relationship, and I was kind of trying to leave it all behind, go to India, be with Mother Teresa, and experience something absolutely new. And I knew that I was being called there because I was ready to begin my faith journey. And so as I was sitting on this plane, suddenly a man appeared next to me. And he said to me, without looking at me, "You had a very difficult life last week in Atlanta." And I'm like, "Yes, well, I've actually had a very difficult year." He said, "Don't worry, your father will be there when you get back in 6 months." It's like, "No, you don't understand. You see, I'm going back in 4 months. 4 months. No, it will be closer to 6. And I didn't even question who this person was. And then we talked for about 3 hours. He said to me, "You are about to embark on a journey that is your calling." And he said, "Sometimes in the past you have become insecure and you escape it. You close the project. This is one you shall never finish. This is one you must never give up." Of course, he was referring to my trip to Mother Teresa. And he was warning me. He was giving me the encouragement and support that I so badly needed. And then he said something that just came out of the blue. He said, "You have a hole in your heart. Don't worry. It will be filled soon with the birth of your child." "Oh, no, you don't understand. I'm not having a child. I can't have a child. It's too late. My time's over. No, this is something I was not buying." He said, "Yes, very soon." 5 months later, in India, the second husband came to Calcutta, and we conceived Paul, and he was blessed by Mother Teresa before I left India. So I went to India in this deep desolation, a woman who thought her whole calling in life was simply to be a photojournalist, nothing more. And here I became a mother, the very thing that I had always yearned for. And my son has what I would say, only describe as that incredible open heart. He has the compassion that is just, it's beautiful to see in him, this light, like Ron had, that light in his eyes. And another wonderful gift Monsignor gave me in that first meeting was, he said, Mother Teresa had that perfect balance between the compassionate dove, the compassion of the dove, and the wisdom and practical sense of the snake, as is quoted in Matthew. And so he said to me, you need to develop more of the snake. So this was a journey. Believe me, this 6-month journey was about encountering some of my own darkness and pain. It was about surrender, which is still a process I'm going through. It's not about, as Monsignor pointed out to me, did I really take those students to India? Or did God take those students to India? Was I meant to take them? Or was it that God wanted them to go? So sometimes I forget that. Is this about me? Or is this about God? Those 3 kids are his children. He wanted them to experience Calcutta and the work of Mother Teresa. So now we come to the trip that I took in June of 1995. And when I began, in 2008, and when I began talking to Monsignor about this retreat, he talked to me about the importance of Mother Teresa's message and what she best described as wanting to establish the Sacred Heart of Jesus in the hearts of all men and women. And he told me about this conversation she had with the Premier of China when she went there and she wanted to open a couple homes. And the Premier said, "Mother, why do you want to come to China?" "Well, I want to establish the kingship of Jesus Christ through the Immaculate Heart of Mary by serving the poorest of the poor who are the greatest members of the kingdom." And he said, "What did you say?" He didn't understand a word of what she said. And so she repeated it. But this is what she said. And as Monsignor has said to me many times, Mother Teresa was prophetic in her message, not necessarily for today, but for 1,000 years from now. So this was a very prophetic message that Mother Teresa gave to the Premier of China. This was his counsel to me as we spoke. Oh, I love collecting pictures. I've been collecting them over the years. I bet he doesn't even know I have this picture. Barbara Yankotek has sent me many pictures. She's been amazing. She has helped me so much over the years. And she helped me acquire many photographs for a video that we produced with an interview with Monsignor on Mother Teresa, which is here. Monsignor said to me, "Linda, God has given you the opportunity to see what Mother Teresa saw in the poor." And then he described them as being such an authentic group of women, the most authentic group, as he described in the homily yesterday. This is the 2 of us in 1995. You can be the eyes and the heart of Mother Teresa and share it with others. Mother would say, "I pray I stay out of God's way," which was part of my interview with Monsignor. Mother had a great love for Jesus, and she saw him in her sisters. Mother showed us the way to find Christ. Now I'm going to show you, these are my photographs that I took this past June. And they're a little different than what I took in 1995. They're a little bit more, I think the way to describe them is snapshotty. You know, they're not as posed, they're not as controlled. I just kind of went in and took the pictures. Mother surrounded by children. Monsignor has taught me over the years, because I am now a single mother, at times I have thought that it wasn't enough, that Paul didn't have enough in just me. And he has taught me that I was not broken, that our family is not broken, that I was loved by Mother Teresa, and that I could see the poor through Mother's eyes. So in the final analysis, everything that Mother Teresa was about was whatever you did to the least of my brethren, you did it to me. So how did this trip begin from Oklahoma? I like the way they've changed Calcutta to Calcutta, and it's changed from Bombay to Mumbai, which was the old way before the British came along. I took my newspaper reporting class last fall. It was really interesting. I heard about Huldah Buntain, who had been a missionary, Protestant missionary in Calcutta, and Mother Teresa helped her establish the first Christian-based hospital. And that's where all the sisters and all the patients went in Calcutta over the last 50 years for treatment. So Huldah was coming to Purcell, Oklahoma, which was quite close, to speak to the congregation. So in my first week as a teacher, my newspaper reporting class said, we are going to a church to interview Huldah Buntain. One of my students, Angela, said, this is a state university. We don't go to churches. I am not going to go to a church to interview anybody. And I said, Angela, if you plan to be a reporter or in this business, you're going to be asked to do a lot of things, including going to churches. This is not about religion. This is about covering an event. And I would like you to go there to cover this wonderful lady's speech, her testimony about working in India with the poor. Well, she refused and complained to the dean about me and dropped the class. That's okay. A bunch of others came, including Blair, who was one of the students that came with me to India. And they had a marvelous time. They said, wow, she sure started us with this incredibly difficult project right off the bat. So the three students that came with me were Luke, Jared, and Blair. And we were quite well prepared, going to rural clinics in Calcutta to take pictures for this documentary. And as I just explained yesterday, this was one of Mother's rosaries. There was a restless heart within me during this time because I didn't feel her presence. So what happens is when I met Sister Teresita, I went to Shishubawan and I was waiting to speak to her, and I looked around the room and I just read all the quotes that were on the wall, which included, God's work has to be done in His own way. He has His own ways and means of making our work known. This was a picture I took in 1995 on the top, and on the bottom, that was from a rural clinic. Our work is only the expression of the love we have for God. Sister Teresita said to me, right from the beginning of our interview, every day I stand in front of a picture of Mary and say, please give me a blessing. She told us, after my death, I will be on earth and I will be with everyone. And there's Sister Teresita. Sister Teresita said, one of the first things Mother did in the 1980s, was that she released a group of women from a prison. Now, many people across the country say, well, Mother was just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. She wasn't actually doing the real work. She wasn't doing anything around social justice. She wasn't in there solving the issues that landed people in these homes. Well, on the contrary, what is the leper colony? What is the leper colony that she founded in the early 1950s outside Calcutta in this area called Titigar? Is that not a form of social justice when you see lepers lying on the railroad tracks all over Calcutta, and then you put together a group of young men, the Brothers of the Missionaries of Charity, who go around with this van and pick up lepers off the streets and bring them to this beautiful home, this oasis of love, Gandhi Prem Nevas. It's named after Gandhi and a beautiful statue of Gandhi. Is that not social justice? Is that not taking care of hundreds and hundreds of people who have been abandoned and neglected on the streets of Calcutta? Is that not a form of social justice where you establish a school within this oasis of love for the children of the lepers so they can be together with their family members, and where they are given the dignity that they deserve back, where they're no longer treated as the pariah of the streets, but they're treated as individuals and deserve to be loved as everyone else? That's what Mother Teresa did. So Sister Teresita, she's kind of an intellectual type, and she went through a lot of discernment in those early years, including wondering if she was supposed to be a missionary of charity. She thought and told Mother at times that she thought she should be with the Carmelites. So Mother brought in a priest to talk to her. And she said Mother was really nervous. She was pacing the hallways, waiting, because she really wanted Sister Teresita to stay. And she's pacing the hallways, and after the priest left, she said, "So what did he say?" He said that I would get bored just sitting in prayer all day as a contemplative. He said that I'm really an active sister. So I'm staying. Oh, praise be to God. But one of the things Sister Teresita felt was that she wasn't doing enough work in the community. So she went to this women's penitentiary. And there she discovered that there were many women who had just been left abandoned for years and years in the confines of this penitentiary for no reason. And so she brought this to the attention of Mother. And Mother said, well, we have to do something about this. So she gathered her co-workers together in Calcutta, and they pursued it. And they discovered that there were many people, many women there, who had simply been thrown in this prison for such a minor crime. So they were able to, sometime in 1980s, to release the first 20 women. And that continued. And that became part of their ministry, going and working with the women in this prison. She was a student at St. Mary's where Mother taught. And she described, I asked her, what was it like to be a student of Mother's? What was she like before she was Mother Teresa? And she said, she was exactly the same. She was always the kindest, most compassionate teacher. And she described what might be called the first miracle. There was this little girl who was crippled, and Mother would almost always carry her every day to prayers and would carry her up to the altar. And Sister Teresita, as a student, would watch this. One day, she was sitting there, and she saw this little girl put her crutches aside and walk up to the altar by herself in Mother's presence. And she's like, what just happened? And years later, she said to Mother, Mother, was that a miracle? Was that a miracle that I experienced at St. Mary's? And Mother said this to her, don't tell anyone. crossed her mouth with the cross. Don't tell anyone. I was like, wow, this is a scoop. And so when it came time and she decided that when she had gotten that call in 1948 and she was leaving the order, the girls, the students were miserable, absolutely miserable that Mother was leaving. And the rumor was out, Mother's going to go out on the street to be a beggar. She's going out to be a beggar. And there were so many tears the day that Mother stood up to say her farewells. And then, when she went out and she had her sari, the girls would sometimes see Mother on the street, the students, but Mother would ignore them. She would turn around and walk away. She didn't want them to talk to her. She didn't want them to feel sad. She didn't want them to feel abandoned. So she would turn away and walk away. She didn't want to influence them in any way at all. She didn't drag any of these women into her order. They followed her. They followed her. And this is where I talked about where she wanted to become a contemplative. And instead, she became a beggar. She accepted the call to serve the poorest of the poor, wherever they might be. And this is a photograph I took in that slum that was built on a garbage dump. And this is a woman I found. This is where she lived, inside a couple brick walls, sifting through trash. Because this community, that's how they survive. They gather the trash all over the streets of Calcutta. They bring it to this community. They bundle it up and then try to make a few rupees off the recycled garbage. But they were so beautiful. Her calling was to see Jesus in our eyes and for us to see Jesus in their eyes. This was a young boy I photographed who fell off an overcrowded bus in the streets of Calcutta. The buses are so crowded that people are hanging off the buses, and his face was just cut up to pieces, and he was being treated. And this is on the way into that slum, the garbage slum. So she began her work in the slums of Calcutta, and this is the slum I went to. Around the world, healing our bodies, and our souls. Through love. Living in faith without prejudice. When she met with someone, their faith never made any difference, whether they were Catholic, Muslim, or Hindu. She saw Jesus in them. They could feel her great love, and she began with that great love when she was teaching in her school. She taught us how to pray. Sister Teresita, I asked her, I wanted to know what it was like to live with Mother. What was it like, the first 20 women lived in a dormitory before they moved over to now what is now called the Mother House. So they would all sleep together. And Sister Teresita said, we have seen Mother prayer. We like to pray like Mother. Morning prayer, she said very loudly. When you pray to the Lord, God is attentive to your prayers, and the devils run away. She said, not to pray too loudly, but not to keep silent. She was very specific, even on how to pray. She said, she was already a saint. She meant every word of the meaning of a prayer. She would say, I love you with my whole heart and soul. So she was the first one to get up at 20 to 5 a.m. in the morning, exactly. Mother was very specific about everything she did. She got up exactly at 20 to 5. And that's what she would say when she got up. She would say, I love you with all of my heart and my soul. And so when they were all sleeping in this dormitory, the bell rang, and Mother said 20 minutes was enough time to do everything in order to prepare for prayers. She would jump out of bed and praise the Lord. And then we would all reply, Amen. We would start with a short morning prayer, make the sign of a cross, dress very quickly, brush our teeth, and go to the toilet. She was very specific about their whole ritual. Mother was always the first one to go to the chapel. Let's see if one of you can see Jesus before me, she would say. 10 minutes before us, she would always show up. Jesus has been left alone all night, she would say. I have to say good morning to him. After morning prayer, there was meditation, the daily gospel, and we would read. Mother would tell us not to go to sleep, and she showed us how to pray and how to read our Bible so that we wouldn't fall asleep. She would hold the Bible out like this. So if you had your arms out, you were less likely to go to sleep. So she would hold her, all the 20 girls were like this. I was just eating up her words. I was like, really? And how was that, like holding out your arms? And she would say that Mother, because they were all so young and inexperienced, she would say to just read one line at a time and to meditate on that one line. This was amazing discipline. Amazing discipline. She did whatever she could do for the church. Of course, this is from Sister Teresita. The Holy Father used her in places where he couldn't go. Pope John Paul requested from her that she care for the neglected children of the world. And she loved her priests. She loved the church very much, the bishop and each priest. Even the youngest priest, she would leave her cell, work water to attend to a priest. She said, without a priest, we can't have Jesus. He brings Jesus in the host. She adored her priest. She was deeply in love with the church. Mother was deeply in love with people. At the Mother House, she anticipated those meetings and would be concerned if the hall was empty. Sister Teresita said to me, she would wait for people to come. And a lot of people I met, volunteers in India, were afraid to go and be with Mother. They'd come all this way. I met this Argentinian girl once, and she was crying. And I said to her, why are you crying? And she said, the only reason I came here was to be a nun. And the sisters say I'm too old. She was like 34. And, you know, it's funny because I didn't tell you yesterday, but Mother Teresa invited me to be a nun. She invited me to the Come and See program. I was like, but Mother, I'm not here to be a nun. I'm a journalist. And she was like, oh, yes, of course. And that's when she pulled out this little pink piece of paper and wrote on it, "Dear sisters, let Linda Schaefer photograph the work. God bless you, Mother Teresa." After she had put me through all this stuff, I say that Mother had created a blue book just for me with my lesson plan, the daily lesson plan. So Mother did like to talk to people. She did. She loved counseling people. And so I said to this young Argentinian girl, I said, "Have you talked to Mother about this?" And she said, "No, that's Mother Teresa." And I said, "Exactly. That's who you have to go and talk to." I said, "This is what you're going to do. You're going to go down the street and you're going to pick up 6 rosaries. And you're going to go and visit with Mother, and you're going to get those 6 rosaries blessed. You're going to give one of them to me. And then you're going to ask her if you can join the novitiate program." She said, "Well, okay." So that afternoon, I saw her beaming. I said, "So tell me, what happened?" And this was 1995. She said, "Mother said I could join the order. She told me that instead of staying here in Calcutta, I could go through the novitiate program in Venezuela." So that's what she did. Amazing. These people who came halfway across the world, afraid of approaching Mother Teresa when she was so approachable. She loved sitting and talking to people. Looking at my timeline. Am I like, help, help? Okay, so then I heard about this beautiful story about a young boy by the name of Arup. And Arup was a young Hindu boy, and he would come and seek Mother's counsel quite often. And so one day, Mother said to him, I just love this story, "How did you travel here today?" "I came in a bus." "What did you do in the bus?" "I looked at the people around me." "No, you shouldn't do that. You can pray when sitting on the bus. You should travel by train, not by bus." Mother told him, "You should travel by 3rd class." "Why?" "There you become poor. You sit among them and make them happy. Sit among the uneducated." That was her advice to Arup. I asked Sister about Mother's dark night. And she said, first of all, that most of the young women were very young. And there was no one that Mother could actually seek comfort from within her own group. So she would go naturally to the priests and talk to them about her troubles. And she actually said, I said, "Did Mother ever get angry?" "Oh, yes, she would scold us. She would bring us all together in the room and she would scold us. It would make us very nervous. And then we knew that she was suffering. But then she was always the compassionate mother, followed by the scolding. So I felt better about my own scolding." I'm going to go through this a little bit faster because I know the time is running. This is Paritosh, who I met. And he took me into this beautiful community. And Paritosh graduated from the St. Xavier College, and he's now going to England to get his MBA. And then he will go back to Calcutta and really coordinate his efforts in helping some of the poorest of the poor in Calcutta. This was in St. Xavier College. I just found it an interesting picture because this is what we're about, the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And here's a picture of Mother and Pope Benedict. That's what I'm always looking for as a photographer. The pictures that, it's not a great photograph, but it says a lot within the picture. I already did that one. I just write out some stuff. I don't necessarily say it all. It's just that Paritosh met Mother Teresa when he was just a college boy. And he nearly died. And it was because of Mother Teresa's intervention that they actually thought he had AIDS because he was so sick. And then it was through her intervention, when he was given a miraculous medal, that he was healed by Mother Teresa. This will all be part of my second book, so I'm not going to read it all. He said to me, on one occasion I met Mother all alone. She was waiting on the ground floor of St. Mary's Church, Ripon Street, for the Archbishop of Calcutta. You would not believe that moment how I felt. I cannot describe. I felt that I am with Mother Mary. That was what his feelings were about being with Mother Teresa. And he grew up extremely poor. I do not mind to share with you that I love the way Indians speak. I mean, very educated in the St. Xavier. I do not mind to tell you how I grew up. Very poor family. I went through a lot of hardship. We used to live in a slum until I got married and moved to a new house. Anyway, he took up this mission with this welfare society. And this is one of the places where I photographed, where he has created a little schoolhouse right next to an open slum. And they teach art lessons to these slum children. Just beautiful, marvelous work that this young man is doing with the inspiration of Mother Teresa. Pavitran. And then I'm going to go to what is it that I see through the lens of my camera. A view of poverty through the lens of my camera. This is a picture I took in 1988 in Miami. A Haitian mother in Miami bringing dignity to her family. This is a picture I took in the early 1980s in New York City. I found this little girl abandoned, alone, in an apartment building. So I guess I've been doing this a long time, guys. And she's just standing there with a broom. Like, how is she possibly going to clean this filthy apartment? This was Shizam. I found him in the Bowery in New York City. And he said he preferred living in the Bowery because he could retain his dignity there. And then I found him in Mother Teresa's Calcutta. I found poverty there. In life on the street. Finding company on the street with others in silent acceptance. In those moments of abandoned prayer, the Ganges is a constant companion of prayer for millions who view the water as holy. Living on the edge, in the end it is between you and God, between me and you, between you and them, and between them and him. In not knowing the future, not having a home on earth, living on the razor's edge, maybe a college degree, or maybe a degree in humility. Thank you very much. You know, I've met a lot of people across the country now who have had these amazing encounters. I'd love to share one from California of a story of a woman in the 1980s. She was 85 years old, and she always wanted to meet Mother Teresa, and but she never thought she would have that opportunity. And she was friends with a priest who had a relationship with Mother. And Mother, as you know, had a heart condition. And often when she would come to the United States, she would go to La Jolla. There's a Scripps clinic there that's famous for heart surgery and so forth. And so they brought her to the Scripps clinic. And there was an amazing amount of security surrounding the hospital because, of course, Mother Teresa was there. And so this priest told this older woman, he said, I'm going to take you to see Mother Teresa now. So they arrive at the hospital, and there was guards outside, and they said, no, no one is seeing Mother Teresa. And the priest said, no, we have to see Mother Teresa. We are here to see Mother Teresa. And you know, she was like that. She was persistent. And so they said, well, you have to go and talk to Sister Nirmala and see if you can get permission from her. So they went inside, and Sister Nirmala was there, and they said, Sister, we really need to see Mother Teresa, even for a moment. And Sister Nirmala said, no one's seeing Mother today. She's very, very sick. No, we need to see Mother Teresa. Well, I'll tell you what. Go and have some lunch. Come back, and I'm going to let you walk by Mother Teresa's hospital door. And we'll leave the door open, and you can just look in. And then just keep walking. Okay. So they did that, the priest and this young lady, 85 years old. And when they came back, they walked by Mother's door, and suddenly, this is what happened, because I heard it both from the priest and the lady. Mother got up from her bed. She was connected to IVs all over the place. So these doctors and nurses came running into her room and started walking with her with all the IVs. And Mother walked out into the hallway, connected to IVs and doctors and nurses. And this 85-year-old woman dropped on her knees and kissed Mother Teresa's feet. And Mother began talking to her and giving her the consolation she had always been seeking for. And this 85-year-old woman told me that she did not see any IVs. She did not see any doctors or nurses. All she saw was Mother Teresa standing in front of her. They were invisible to her. It was only her and Mother together.
Funny you should have mentioned that story, because she got well in that clinic. And one of her doctors, very wonderful doctor, was Jewish. And after she came out of the hospital, she called me. And she said, Father, yes, Mother, I want you to do me a favor. I said, what do you want me to do? I want you to go to see this doctor's mother. He lives in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. The doctor that was in charge of her there in that clinic. And I said, okay, Mother, I'll go. He's Jewish. And she's Jewish. Have a mass for her. I said, Mother, I'll offer mass for her, but I'm not going to have mass with her. Don't you worry. His mother was Jewish too. Have a mass for her. That's a true story. And yeah, really true. The same. That mother was from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and that doctor that was at that hospital was the one who helped her so much.
Wow. Oh, I need to share one more story then. You know, I had the great opportunity, of course, of seeing Mother almost on a daily basis, but I didn't have these amazing encounters like Monsignor and Marlene. You know, I didn't get on a phone and call Mother Teresa. She didn't call me, but she has called me in my dreams since she died. And 2 years ago at Christmas, I had a difficult relationship with my own mother. My own mother was Norwegian. She had a lot of that Bergman angst in her. she was a perfectionist. She wanted us to be perfect. And she wanted me, somehow she had this image of me ending up on Madison Avenue as an art director for J. Walter Thompson. Well, you know, that's not who I was. And she would mail me suits, and I never wore them because I always wore blue jeans and T-shirts. And since she died, it's the first time I've worn a suit since she died. I mean, I've been wearing suits. And I think, well, so now she's enjoying herself watching me in these suits. But the last year of my mom's life, we mended a lot. I mean, I spent a lot of time with her. She went blind in the last 4 months of her life. And I just did wonderful things with her. And it was a lot of healing that went on. But she was Lutheran, and she thought she was going to go straight to hell when she died. So she had this fear of death. And so from a young age, I felt this sense of responsibility for her and her well-being. She had had cancer when I was 13, and we had always been there for Mom through her journeys of suffering, which went on for a long time. And so I was concerned about my mother and her well-being after she died. So Christmas night, I see and experience Mother Teresa in my dream, and then I woke up, and Mother said to me, "Your mother has changed, and she has been lifted." And suddenly my mother is right next to her in this vision, and her face was totally relaxed. There was no more worry lines, and she looked like she was at complete peace and filled with joy. So I knew Mother was with her, and I felt at that moment that this burden was lifted off of my shoulders, and that my mother was with Mother, and that she was at peace finally.
Linda, I guess you did tell them you're a convert to Catholicism.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you.
One of our great teachings is purgatory. And one of the great devotions of Mother was to pray for the souls. She had a great devotion for the poor souls. And so this story, it fits so in with Mother's ministry. And the poorest of the poor, she would always say, are the souls in purgatory. And among the souls in purgatory are those who are poorest of the poor there that have no one else to pray for them. So one of the things that she constantly would share with me is that we should pray for those who have no one else to pray for them. So I just think that's a beautiful story, and I'm sure that through her intercession, your mother is now with God. Want to tell us your mother's name?
Leave. Like Leave Ghostmond was her name. Wow.
Thank you very much.
Maybe in the question and answers I can tell you what happened in St. Peter's Square when I became Catholic. You want to know now? Okay, all right, good. Well, you know, little did I know that Monsignor Esseff was there with a group for the beatification with Barbara and Sean and a few other folks from here. And I went with a group from North Carolina with Bishop Curlin, who had met Mother in Washington, D.C. And so I met the group in Pennsylvania from Atlanta, and then we were flying over to Rome. And this is the first time I'd ever been on any kind of mission pilgrimage trip. I mean, I'm the Lone Ranger. I travel alone most of the time. And honestly, I mean, I know I joke about this, but this was one of my fears, is like, I'm going to be with a bunch of Catholics doing the rosary all day long. I could just imagine us on the bus and them chanting. And
God forgive her.
So I thought, it was 28 parishioners, Bishop Curlin, and 5 priests. That's a lot of Catholics, and me. So I was a little bit like, oh gosh, please save me from this. We got to Rome, at first, Bishop wanted to take us to Assisi to experience the life of St. Francis, who he so often compared to Mother Teresa. And so we went on this journey of the basilicas, and he began his homilies, and then we went to Rome. And I didn't even bring my press passes. I thought, I'm not there to document, I'm there to experience. Of course, I had a camera with me and a video camera just in case. Just a little video camera, not that big one. And so right from the beginning, this news media started contacting me because my book had been released and they wanted me to be on their programs. I was on BBC, BBC Worldwide, Sky Television, and National Public Radio. And then all of a sudden I got a call, and this was all totally unplanned. I mean, totally unplanned. Then I had a call from CNN. They found my hotel room. I don't know how they found the hotel room, but, journalists are journalists. And they asked me to appear live on CNN during the beatification. And I thought, well, I really wanted to be with the group in St. Peter's Square. And I thought, well, okay. And so I went on top of the roof of the building where CNN had their skybox. And I got there really, really early. And all the the buildings overlooking St. Peter's had a different news organization perched on the roof. So you had CNN over here, NBC, CBS, Fox, and I was sitting all alone at the edge of the roof overlooking St. Peter's with 300,000 people gathered. And I thought, oh my gosh, I couldn't have arranged this. I couldn't have arranged a better vantage point. And I'm absolutely alone. And it's like between me and God at that moment. And this was right before I was going to go on the television. And so suddenly, this was actually right after I was on air, and Pope John Paul is giving his homily. And I had had a very profound experience with Pope John Paul in 1981, right before he was assassinated, when he just happened to drive by my bedroom window in New York City and bless me. Wow. And I was like, that's the Pope. I've just been blessed by the Pope. And then I had the opportunity to be with him in South Carolina when he spoke, and here I am seeing him right before his death. But he's there honoring and this beautiful missionary of the century, Mother Teresa, his little sister. And it was so profound to me to see this broken man, this Pope, who is still there in spirit, in his strength, and his great presence to honor Mother Teresa. And as the curtain parted, revealing the now Blessed Teresa of Calcutta, I also felt something part within me. And I felt this sense of that I finally belonged to this church. And I said, oh, okay, I think I'm okay with it now. But it was a sense I had to be completely alone in that moment, encapsulated in this moment of time that was so profound. And when I got back to Atlanta, my son was there, and he meted me at the airport, and he said, Mom, can we go to a Catholic church now? Because he had watched everything on TV. And I said, sure. And so we went to, and he received his first communion, and then Monsignor came to Atlanta, and Paul assisted him in a mass at my house when he consecrated my house to Jesus. And he told Monsignor that he was going to become a priest one day. We'll see. And Monsignor's Paul's godfather. And so I know that my son is in Monsignor's prayers every day, so I'm like, he's fine. I got Mother Teresa watching over him. I got Monsignor. What else can you ask for? And so I felt this great sense of, I'm kind of like this analytical person. I had to go through this whole process of analysis before I feel comfortable about accepting anything. And so I came to it there on St. Peter's Square, and I've enjoyed becoming and learning and being a part of the faith. And as Monsignor has told me, for now, you still, Mother Teresa is the person you lean on. And eventually, I will lean more and more on Jesus and less on Mother Teresa.
What I hear is it took Ron to smash that door around your heart, and that's gone. And it took Mother Teresa to remove that obstacle to the church, and John Paul too. And it's going to take Jesus now.
Bring me the rest of the way.
Yeah. Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. Thank you. Thank you very much.